Well, the government has a new face this week. James Paterson has been sworn in as a new senator from Victoria. He's taken on that role. He's only 28 years old. And yesterday afternoon, we saw him deliver his first speech in the Senate, focusing on a few issues, and he joins us now to have a look at them. Thank you very much for joining us. Congratulations on becoming a senator. Now, before we get to some of the themes brought up in your first speech, one of your old colleagues at the IPA, Tim Wilson, is up for pre-selection for the seat of Goldstein this weekend. News this afternoon that there's a bit of a smear campaign against him. We don't know who's behind it, but it goes to his sexuality, his positions on not only gay marriage but a lot of other issues as well. What do you think of this sort of thing going on in the Liberal Party?
Well, David, I was incredibly disappointed to hear about this afternoon. There is just no history and no culture of this happening in the Victorian division of the Liberal Party. I mean, this is something which, as you probably know, happens often in the Labor Party, but I can't recall a time in my involvement in the Liberal Party of more than a decade of this ever happening, and of such a personal smear against Tim. It is a really, really disappointing
Will it hurt his chances?
I don't think it will. I think it will backfire extraordinarily. I think it will generate a lot of sympathy and a lot of goodwill for Tim, because everyone knows Tim's a great Liberal. Tim's a fighter for our cause, and this personal attack on his sexuality is really just underhanded, and I think Liberals will stand for it.
We'll see how he goes on Saturday. Let's get to some of the issues you raised in your first speech. You called for Australia to show more solidarity for Israel. Can I ask, in a week that we've seen the Iranian Foreign Minister here in Canberra welcomed by the government, is that showing the sort of solidarity you're talking about?
Well, I think we should always welcome foreign dignitaries from any government that wants to come and talk. That is part of the diplomatic process, no question about that. And I think Australia's voting record at the UN on Israel issues, for example, has been pretty robust and pretty strong. But I think there's always more that we can do. And a key issue for Israelis is the insult that they don't even get to pick their own capital city. They say, and in effect, Jerusalem is their capital city, but not many in the international community recognise that.
You say we should, and move our embassy there.
Absolutely. Why do we have our embassy in Tel Aviv when all the government officials, all the key bodies, the Knesset, are in Jerusalem? A lot of business is done there. Our ambassadors travel there all the time. It would be practical as well as symbolic to move our embassy to Jerusalem.
You also called for the reintroduction of the debt ceiling in Australia. Wayne Swan brought that in. Joe Hockey got rid of it. Why do we need it back?
Well, I think as a matter of principle, it's a good thing that a government, any government, ours or theirs, should have to come to the Parliament to get approval to increase debt. The default setting shouldn't be that government can just increase debt exponentially forever without any opportunity to have to justify that. So I'm not saying this is a silver bullet. I'm not saying it will solve all the problems, but I think it's a pretty basic and reasonable thing that a government should have to demonstrate why it needs to continue to go into debt.
Of course, one of the reasons it was removed, because you might get into a situation, as we've seen in the United States, where you do get a deadlock, debt ceiling's not increased, and then what happens?
I don't think there's much risk of that happening in Australia. I think any government that really does need to increase debt will be able to make a reasonable argument to do so. Christine Milne was the Greens leader that did the deal, and her motivation to doing it was she didn't want to have discussion about debt. She thought that discussion about debt was a bad thing. As a young person, I don't feel that at all.
A couple of quick ones. The effects test that was announced yesterday by the government seems to me hardly in line with free market IPA ideology.
Well, look, David, I do come from a position which is sceptical of giving government agencies more power, including the ACCC. But I have to say it's hard to argue with the credentials of someone like Ian Harper. He's a great economist, a very free market guy. He's looked at this very carefully, more carefully than I have. And his view is that this needs to be addressed and changed, and that it has been an obstacle to competition. And more competition is always a good thing. And
the Safe Schools program that's being hotly debated in government ranks right now, how do you see this one? Do you have a big problem with it?
Well, I strongly support anti-bullying programs in schools, including for same-sex attracted kids, especially for same-sex attracted kids. But I have to say, I think this particular program and the way in this program has been run and the people who have set it up has not been well handled, and a review it has been justified. So
should the funding be stopped, or should the program be amended?
I have to say I don't have a great deal of confidence in the people who are running the program. One of the people who runs it is an admitted Marxist who has said the education system is a tool to pull down the capitalist system. I don't think a Liberal government should be funding a scheme like that. I would much rather see a much more general anti-bullying program which caters for the needs of same-sex attracted children and protects them, but not this existing program and the people who've been running it.
Senator Paterson, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Quick break.